weekly webinar session. Our session today is strategic marketing for CSOs. Our favorite resource person, Mr.G. Srinivasan, will be delivering this webinar on behalf of TrekStep and EU Genie project. We are very glad to welcome you, sir. As you all know, TrekStep with the Genie CSOs for Climate Venture project has been organizing series of capacity development programs addressing various capacity needs of our CSO network members. As the digital landscape is facing sea change, us CSOs also have to develop effective marketing strategies to reach out to our beneficiaries, stakeholders, and funding agencies. This webinar envisages to cover areas such as developing target audience orientation, segmentation, targeting and positioning, branding, how to formulate and manage communication strategies, generating funds, and working with private sector. So our resource person, Mr. G. Srinivasan, is a strategy consultant and leadership coach and mentor for enabling social enterprise. He has 3 decades of experience in business and technology consulting and in building global practices in the field of business intelligence and analytics. His expertise also extends to strategic planning, institutional strengthening, and leadership development. Currently, he is serving as an advisor for a large multi-business firm in organizational and business transformation. He is also engaged with a non-profit organization working in the area of poverty alleviation. He is also a visiting faculty member in many business schools, teaching strategic management and IT strategy besides business analytics. He is a thought leader in the field of strategic execution, process innovation, business intelligence, and analytics. As a key member of TCS Management Consulting Group, worked with many government agencies and World Bank funded programs in the area of education, infrastructure, and environmental management. Again, on behalf of TrekStep, we welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to Bindu and Mr. Tyagarajan for giving me this opportunity to meet all of you and talk to you. It's a wonderful topic and a wonderful set of audience. I'm very glad that we're going to spend the next 1 hour on discussing a topic which is very vital to all of us. How do we do strategic marketing? It's a field where we all know a little bit, everyone knows a little bit about something. There are also a lot of myths in this topic of strategic management, especially for strategic marketing, especially for CSOs. So let's see what best we can do in the next 1 to 1.5 hours. So the ground rule is that I would like to get a lot of feedback from you and get into some discussion mode rather than, webinar is very tough to communicate a lot of some complex ideas unless we start interacting and discussing. So my presentation today is going to be in 2 parts. One is initially in the first part, I'm going to give you a very quick introduction about basics of marketing, fundamentals of marketing, so that we are all talking the same language, we all understand, the basics well. And I'm sure many of you know this, must be knowing this very well. So, but in any case, just for completion, the sake of completion, I'm going to talk about strategic marketing, some concepts initially. That is the first part of my presentation. In the second part, we can get into applying those concepts, what strategic marketing means in the world of non-profit organizations. So that's going to be the second part of my presentation. And in the second part, we will take specific examples. We will look at some case studies, and I would there invite you to talk about your experience also. And when we near I want to set aside about 15 to 20 minutes for discussion at the end, so we can discuss certain specific plans of action that you want to evolve. Initially, I want to talk about a lot of some fundamental concepts that we all need to be aware of before we get into techniques. I'm sure most of you would like to know immediately, how do I get onto social media? How do I create an effective campaign, and what all should I do and things like that. So I will definitely talk about the trends, the current marketing trends in non-profits at the end. But most important there is to see what we can do while we look at the trend. So we will dedicate the last 15 to 20 minutes for discussion. And in between, of course, I'm going to ask you some questions. We will take some examples, and then I'll try to get your perspectives. So with this brief introduction, I will straight away get into my presentations. I'm requesting TrekStep to coordinate because I'm doing it through multiple devices. I'm looking at my laptop, I'm looking at this cell phone. I find it difficult to manage. So you can actually run the slides for me if it's not a problem. So we'll start with my first presentation. Yeah, so this, as I said, is the first part of my presentation where I'm going to talk to you about concepts, fundamentals of strategic marketing. So we'll move on to the next slide, slide 2. Okay, so first thing in strategic marketing is the whole idea. Initially, let's not forget about profits, non-profits and everything. So let's look at marketing. So what exactly is the objective in marketing? What are we trying to do? Okay, that is the first question, because every other function, the role is very clear. Production means you have to produce something. Finance is managing cash, accounting and things like that. Everything is very clear. So when it comes to marketing, there are various ways of looking at it. So one of the first thing is the purpose of marketing is to win markets. That is, every market is divided into all kinds of segments, we call it. Now, we may be using in non-profit, we don't use the term market. So we are calling it as constituencies and segments or stakeholder groups and things like this. So for the time being, let's assume market refers to some region or a constituency, particular set of stakeholders and things like this. But how to win over these markets? Like we win in a particular game or something. In a tournament, we want to win. So marketing is all about winning. And how does that winning take place? I mean, how do we win? So that is the key question in marketing. That's what marketing people are trying to do all the time. How do we win? So this can happen through many ways. One is through the quality of our products and services. I hear some conversation. I think everybody has to go on mute unless you want to ask a question. So
kindly requesting everyone to put your mic on mute, please. So please.
Okay. So the first thing is about quality. In the quality of work that we do, one of the fundamental criteria. It's your product or your service and things like that. And the second thing, which may not be applicable to in our case, for example, the prices has to be low and the services has to be better than somebody else. And whatever we are offering, the product or service, there is a continuous improvement. Like we are not doing the same thing, we are not offering the same thing, year after year. And when we are doing something, it's also very innovative. Right? And is it personalized? It's not a standard service that we are offering. How can we personalize it to the needs of customers? So if you look at today in our world, banks, for example, which were 20 years back, 30 years back, bank meant a very standardized service of just dispensing with cash or giving instruments like demand drafts and things like this. And today banks are buying with each other to ensure that they do something which is very personalized, very customized to their customers. Okay. So those are the things. Then as we do all these things in marketing, one of the things that you will see that the customer expectations keep increasing all the time. So that is one. And since I talked about winning markets, it always means that you are expanding the area in which you are working. So higher market share. So these are all the ways in which you will win over your market. So this is a fundamental of strategic marketing. We can go to the next slide, but also ensure that you are in slideshow mode. Right now, we are not in slideshow.
Yes, sir.
So just go to slideshow mode and can you change to slideshow?
It seems there is some technical issues. They are moving, but we are not able to see that. I don't know. Some.
Okay, at least we move to the next slide. Discussion themes.
Yes.
So now these are the topics I'm also going to explore in further with specific reference to CSOs in the second part of my presentation. So the first one is how do we identify the opportunities? I'm going to give you a definition based on this opportunity because it's a very important thing. And how do we create targeted offerings? This is true both for both in the corporate world and in the non-profit segment. Like how do we identify opportunities and how do we create targeted offerings? And then afterwards, how do we develop value propositions and using market intelligence, which is basically to collect a lot of data. And then what we call as a marketing mix. This is a very basic thing in marketing, that your entire marketing program is centered around few components. So we call it as a marketing mix. So we need to be familiar with that. And how do we expand our reach? So in the corporate world, they typically call as acquiring and growing customers. And lastly, digital marketing. Technology has come to play a very huge role, as we all know that. So now how do we adapt to that from a marketing perspective? So these are things we are going to discuss, the first in general and later for CSOs. Okay, so go to the next slide. So here we see the definition of marketing. Is it possible for you to get into the slideshow mode? It's just on the right hand bottom, you have to click on the...
Usha, are you clicking it? The slideshow mode, is it Varamating?
For the participants to see that instead of being in this.
Usha, slideshow mode Varamating.
Slideshow mode Varamating, ma'am. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay. Then that is fine. Okay, no problem.
Maybe
So this is a very simple definition for marketing. At the beginning I said marketing means different things to different people. So immediately some people think of marketing as selling and things like this, or marketing means trying to influence somebody and things like this. But here is a very simple definition for marketing, which says it's an art. It's an art of finding, developing and profiting from opportunities. Okay. So when you say art, we all know that it is not something step by step. Everything can be defined step by step. So there is a lot of scope for intuition. There's a lot of scope for experience, judgment. That's why we say art. Or if you want, you can even expand to say art and science. So because there is something that you can do systematically in marketing. So it's art and science of finding, developing and profiting from opportunities. Like in your own case, I mean, you may be finding a lot of new opportunities to serve your customers, new opportunities to find volunteers, new opportunities to find sponsors. Okay, so how do we do that in a very intuitive way? How do we do that in a way that keep expanding your opportunities? So this is a very fundamental definition for marketing, which is relevant to it could be relevant for a school, it can be relevant for a hospital, it can be relevant for any government agency or a profit organization or a startup. So this is a basic definition of marketing. So we'll go to the next one, next slide, where I'm trying to tell you that what is not marketing. Before we get into that, I think it's better to understand what is not marketing. The first thing, as I said, marketing is not selling. Typically, whenever we say marketing, the image that comes to your mind is a door-to-door salesman who will come and try to sell something at your doorstep, or the salespeople at the retail shop or something like that. So marketing is not selling, and it is not the responsibility of just one or two people. If you have an organization, it's a responsibility for everybody to market. And the other thing is, today there is a lot of analytics that goes on in marketing. So earlier, everybody would have said marketing is something you do intuitively. You don't need to collect a lot of numbers and analyze. Today, unless you collect a lot of numbers and analyze them, it's very difficult to do marketing. And last but not the least, you keep hearing about terms like social marketing, content marketing and things like this. These are not fads. These are not things that are optional. This is something that's very important for everybody to do. Now, at this stage, you may have a question. Is it all relevant to non-profits? The interesting thing is, I'm going to talk about it in detail later. The interesting thing is, the non-profits have been doing very effective marketing for the last several decades. And in fact, the corporate world is learning a lot from the non-profits. How successfully you launch certain campaigns, the way campaigns have been run for, for example, cancer prevention or children's rights, human rights campaigns. So health awareness campaigns. These campaigns have done marketing to a very great extent, very wonderful extent, that corporates are now studying them and seeing what can we learn the way communication is being done. So we are going to look at it later. So just keep in mind that marketing means a lot of things. It's not just, you can't reduce it to very few things like selling and things like that. Okay, so go to the next slide. So what are the types of marketing? One is where you respond to something. That is one kind of marketing. The other one is where you anticipate a need, saying this is what is going to happen. And the third one is where you create a new kind of need, right? So that we call it as a need shifting. Now, responsive marketing, this is something that we all know. We need to respond. Something suddenly new emerges, like when COVID came. So a lot of people then started, nobody could have anticipated, what all the things that COVID can bring. But once the COVID situation scenario emerged, you could see that many companies, healthcare companies or hospitals, insurance. So a lot of people started responding to that need and try to create something. Now, anticipatory is where that new younger people are coming into a particular region. Okay, so the needs of today's youth is going to become tomorrow's customers for you, adult customers for you. The children are going to become the adult. You can anticipate a lot of things as things are going. Now, need shifting. So what do you mean by need shifting? You can see a lot of shifting constantly happening between products to services, from being something which is, like today, if you take banks again, if I take the example, today most of the banks, they don't want you to come to the branch. So they want you to do a lot of your work online so that the burden on the banking system and the banking professional comes down. So they want to change the way you shop, change the way you experience and transact and things like this. So if you look at all these three things are non-profits are doing. You are responding certain needs, let's say healthcare and things like this. You are anticipating certain things that will happen, and therefore you are trying to build awareness in certain things. For example, if you do climate crisis, a lot of work that we do in things like this. One is of course responding, because we already created a lot of damage to the nature, to the ecosystem. But we are also anticipating a lot of things that if we continue to do this, the future is going to be very difficult. So we are anticipating that and we are working for a better future. So these are things that we are doing even in the non-profit world. So can we go to the next slide, please? So we can skip this because there's some too much details here. So we can skip this. I want to go to that second part of the presentation. Okay. So now, when you talk about marketing, this is a very important term that everybody uses in marketing, saying, what is your marketing mix? So if I say I have a marketing program, the first thing then you have to be clear about is, what is my marketing mix? Which means nothing but various components of your marketing program. It says very clearly, this is my product or this is my service. Are you able to say, this is what I'm doing? Okay, so that is your product. And at what price or what is the cost involved? So that will be money as attached to your product or service. And then how do we promote our work? Is it through media? Is it through internet? Is it through print media? Is it through events? So how am I promoting myself? And place, where all does my work happen? How do I distribute my services? And what kind of people are involved? Is it all own employees? Is it volunteers? And how do I understand the needs of the people? Needs of the people, with what kind of people I'm interacting, to whom I'm selling my products and services. So all these questions come under people. And then the next P is called as the process. Okay. So what processes do I follow? For accounting, for auditing, for identifying projects, for recruiting people, for evaluating them. So that is process. And lastly, physical evidence. So this is, for example, if you are a purely service industry, okay, so your service is completely intangible. So now what physical evidence do you have for showing to potential customers or prospects that you're doing high quality work? So generally they call this as 4 P's, or in this case 7 P's. Okay, the 4 P's is normally product, price, place and promotion. If you add these 3, this becomes 7 P's. So whenever you have a marketing program, you try to address these 7 components, then that means your marketing program is complete. Okay. I go to the next slide, please. So at the beginning, I said marketing is about winning, right? We want to win, which means we want to expand whatever we are doing or growing our markets. So there are 4 ways this quadrant shows 4 different things. Okay. Whenever I say products, just say products/services. It also refers to services. So your products and services may be something which you are already doing, that is your existing thing, and it can be something new. Okay. Similarly, the markets, that is the segments in which you are working, the sectors in which you are working, the regions in which you are working, that can be new as well as existing. So if you combine these 2 dimensions, you will get 4 different quadrants. So these are the ways actually the demand for your services keep growing. So what is inside those 4 quadrants are basically ways in which your demands keep growing. Now we'll see that in the next slide. Just this diagram is explained in the next slide. So there are 6 ways to build demand or to expand the work you are doing. Many NGOs use the term, I want to scale up, right? I want to become bigger. So all of us want to increase our range and reach and scale, impact. So basically we want to scale up. So the scaling up is what in the corporate world is saying we want to build demand, want to increase demand. So there are 6 ways of doing it. One is what is called as penetration. So your marketing strategy is more of penetration. That is, I want to do more, whatever I'm doing right now, my products and services in this existing region. I want to do more of that. Okay. So that is called as a penetration strategy. Now your second marketing strategy will be to expand what you are doing. Suppose you are working now in only one district in a particular state. I want to expand to all the neighboring districts. Instead of one, I want to work in 10 districts or 5 districts. Or I'm working only in one state. I want to move to a different state. I want to do in 3 different states. So this is what we call as a geographical expansion. That's another way you can expand your reach. And the third one is what we call as another marketing strategy is segment innovation. That is, how do we are currently doing a particular service. It can be in education, healthcare or something. Now I want to do it, I'm doing it in only one kind of customer. I'm taking it to different kind of customers. For example, I'm focusing only on now education for children. What if I look at adult education? Okay. So I want to take my same service, what I'm doing, I'm taking it to a different segment of people. I'm doing it only in the rural area. Now I want to do it in the urban area. The same service. So this is called segment innovation. The other one is where you start, you have some product or service, you are modifying it, you want to change it. And you want to change it and then offer it to the existing segment. Okay, so that is called as a product modification. And the last 2 things are very interesting things. The last 2 things are, you are currently in one field, but you want to design something which is totally new. Maybe, for example, you want to use technology, you want to use artificial intelligence, you want to come up with a totally new kind of service. And I want to take that service to new customers. So you can diversify or you can do new product development. So there's a 6 ways. This is a very important slide. So try to apply it to your work. So what are the ways in which I am building demand? What are the ways in which I am expanding my, or if you want to put it in your language, what are the ways in which I am going to expand my scale, my reach? So this is the essence of marketing strategy, because based on this, you have to develop your marketing strategies. Okay. So you have to be very clear about your product and service offerings, how you are taking it to the current segment, and how you are planning to go to take it to the new segment. So when I say new segment, it can be in terms of region, it can be in terms of domain. Like today, if you are working only in the field of agriculture, tomorrow you want to work in the field of forestry, or from education to healthcare. So you can get into different kinds of domains. So now, how do we do that in a very systematic way? Do you remember the definition of marketing which I started saying? It is the art of art and science of identifying new opportunities, building on them. So these 2 slides are very important. Like, how do we give the marketing definition and how do you build your demand? So we can stop here. I think I have given enough, though there are a little bit more slides in this, but I think we won't have much time. So we'll get into my second part of the presentation, which is more specific for CSOs. So these are just the essentials of marketing which I talked about. So we'll get into the next set of presentation. Before that, I can take a quick pass here and check with you people if you have any doubts, if you want to ask anything. Just raise your hand, unmute, and then you can ask anything before I start, so that I can even fine tune my, whatever I'm saying right now, that can be fine tuned. So any questions? Maybe
it would be nice, yeah. It would be nice. We actually have to give sir a break. So if there is any questions, either the questions, and you can please raise your questions and raise your hands and ask. It can be sharing your experience also. Like you would have planned some marketing event for your NGOs, and how did that work and or not work. Actually, sir can give you good inputs on how to do it better. உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் இருந்தது, அது மாதிரி ஒரு மார்க்கெட்டிங் பிளான், ஒரு கேம்பெயின் பிளான் நம்ம டிசைன் பண்ணி அது சக்சஸ்ஃபுல்லா வந்திருக்கலாம், இல்ல அதுல சேலஞ்சஸ் இருக்கலாம். You can share that.
And also communicate what you expect to, because now I'm getting into strategic marketing in the world of non-profits, specifically for non-profits. So far as giving you essentials. So it will be good to understand your expectations. What would you like to know? What are you expecting to learn? So if I can get some inputs on that, it will be helpful. Yeah, I can see that someone has raised a hand. Dr.
Raman sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I am from a non-profit organization. We have training centers which are considered as running as training cum production centers, because the idea behind the training cum production center is the sustainability of the unit, so that the training will also go on, the unit will sustain. But here the problem is most of the non-profit organization, they are conducting training and production of more or less similar products which are very common in the market, and there is high competition. For example, let us take the case of a bakery. We have a bakery, but we are training people as bakers. Of course, they are getting employment and all. On the other hand, the products which we are making is similar to all other bakeries which is available in the cities or in the rural areas. There are chances of innovation are very limited. For example, now it's an International Year of Millet. So when we make new products, millet-based products, there again the market is less. What I'm trying to say is most of the non-profit organizations are engaged in production of products which are either on the craft or related products, or some other products which are very common, and there is high competition in the market. So the survival is very difficult. That is also one of the reasons why very small women enterprises and all cannot compete, and slowly it is disappearing. So how do we sustain in this area of or era of such a high competition? That's my question.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for raising that question. I really appreciate it, because you cannot talk about marketing unless you talk about competition. And in fact, in the first set of presentation, I wanted to avoid the use of the word competition, because I thought it will create some negative connotation. But I'm glad you raised that question, because marketing is all about creating a competitive advantage. So this competitive advantage is required both in the corporate world and the non-corporate world. Like, how do you position yourself? Okay, how do you position yourself? How do you brand yourself? These are very things, important things. So whatever you asked now, a little bit I'm going to explain in the coming slides. So I'm going to talk about it definitely. How do you create a competitive advantage, right? So that is the essence of marketing, in fact. So unless you have competitive advantage, because you remember my first slide said, how do we win markets? Now, winning can come only because there is a competition for you. Therefore, you have to win. So in every field, there is a lot of competition for things. So there are standardized products and services. So now how do we stand out? So even to attract funds, attractive. Today, there is a lot of scarcity of funds and scarcity of talented people. So we have to fight for funds. We have to fight for. There is a battle for funds and there is a battle for talented people. So even that way also there is a lot of competition. So I think so. We have to understand the true essence of marketing is actually creating a competitive advantage. So we'll definitely that's some point I'm going to address. To the next question, if there is, that's a good input. If there is any other question, okay, then we will start. We'll anyway, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions in between in the second part. So this is my this presentation. I'm calling it as strategic marketing in the world of non-profits. So I want to start with a quotation from a person called Peter Drucker, whom many of you would have heard of, called generally as the father of modern management. Okay, so he makes a very interesting. He has written a lot of non-profits actually, how to manage. And that's been one of the research areas for Peter Drucker, and he has contributed a lot. You know, he says something very interesting. So I'm just reading out the quote, which appeared in a HBR article in 1989 with Peter Drucker. He says, non-profits need management even more than business does, precisely because they lack the discipline of the bottom line. The non-profits are, of course, dedicated to doing good, doing good things and charitable causes and things like this. But they also realize that good intentions are no substitute for organization and leadership, for accountability, performance, and results. Because the moment we say, profit organizations, so there is certain discipline in them because one is ultimately end of the day, they have to make profits. So they can measure by themselves in terms of what is our revenue, what's our cash flow, what's our profit. Now that brings in certain discipline. That discipline comes, so every work is aligned towards it. Now, in the case of non-profits, there is no single profit measure like that. So because of that, you can do a variety of things. You can get trapped in too many activities for a period of time. So that's what he's saying, that they lack the discipline of the bottom line. Of course, a lot of it is driven by good intentions. But the point here is good intentions are not enough. You need a lot of organization, you need a lot of leadership, you need accountability, you need performance, and you need results. Okay? So this is what strategic marketing tries to bring about. I think that's the right question. He started the program with the right question, saying, how do we ensure that we compete and things like that. Okay, can we go to the next slide? So before that, so what exactly is a challenge? I mean, why are we having this problem of marketing in non-profits? What is it that's very unique? The first thing, if we understand that, then we know how to make ourselves effective. The first thing that we realize that we are dealing with multiple target audiences. So I'm going to use this term repeatedly. Each of you have a particular target audience in mind. So we are target audience driven. That is a definition for non-profit organizations. And you have multiple target audiences. Like you have, of course, the charity organizations. You have, the sponsors to whom you go for funding. So you will have government organizations. You will need to go attract a lot of volunteers. Then, of course, all your end users and clients with whom you are trying to work. Okay? So that is multiple target audiences. Second thing is you are trying to influence behaviors. So many of you keep saying that I am working in the area of women empowerment. I am working in some education programs, awareness of human rights. I am working with tribal people. So if you look at obviously there will be many behaviors. You are trying to influence many behaviors. People who don't want to go to school. People who are throwing away their savings on drinking and things like this. People are not taking care of their health. So we are trying to influence behaviors, and we are trying to influence many behaviors. Whereas you look at the corporate world, actually their marketing is simpler. They have only one target audience and the customer to whom they have to sell their products. And there is only one behavior they have to influence. So basically they have to influence the customer to buy. That's all. So in our case, in the case of non-profits, we have both the things are very challengeable. We have multiple target audiences and we have not one behavior but many behaviors to influence. And the third thing is the benefits for the target audience are often intangible. We are trying to convince, let's say, people in the rural areas, people who are illiterate, to do certain things. Because they have faith in us, or because they like what we are saying, they may do it, but they may not immediately see the benefit. Like, for example, taking a vaccine. So they may not know whether immediately will have any effect. So long-term benefit, something is good. So we are trying to make them do something. So the benefits are intangible. So that is one. And some of the things that we are asking people to do, if you look at in your kind of work in the non-profits, you are asking people to have a kind of complete change in the attitude, 180-degree shift. Okay. So today, for example, they are not sending their children to school. You want them to send school. They are spending a lot of money on drinking and smoking. You want them to stop. So any segment, if you look at it, you are asking people, people are not taking care of the environment. You are asking them to take care of the environment. 180-degree shift in attitude and behaviors. So that is another challenge that we have. Then the other challenge is compared to the corporate world, for example. The corporate world will keep constantly changing their offerings, right? Take, for example, soaps or toothpaste. Constantly they're changing the cover of the color of the soap, or the packing and the perfume. So they can keep constantly modifying the offering, making it attractive for the customers. Now, for us, it's very difficult. We do a particular kind of work. It's not that every year we can keep changing, or every quarter we come up with some innovation. So we have to do the same thing for a long period of time. So with that, how do we influence the behavior? So that is another. And the other challenge, how do we portray our offerings in media presentations? If you look at most of the advertisements that we see in TV and all that we see in social media, in the corporate world, their products and services somehow seem to be very amenable to a lot of very interesting presentations and things like this. For non-profits, it seems to be a little bit more difficult. Okay. So how do we create the right content around it? And lastly, the nature of our target audience. So our target audience many times may be financially poor, and they may not have the right level of education. So they may not have the resources. So how do we deal with them? Okay, someone raised your hand, so please feel free to ask your question and mute and.
Mr. Ajit Bera, you have raised your hand. Is there anything you would like to share? Or is that by mistake?
Okay, then we'll go ahead. We can ask the question later. So, and also if you look at this target behavior we are looking at, many times we are also dealing with certain taboo subjects and things like this. For example, let's say you're working on AIDS, or obesity related things where people don't want to talk about it. So this is what I meant. The kind of behaviors we are trying to influence is not going to be very easy. So in this case, so the challenges are much higher. So the main point is here is, compared to the corporate world, actually the marketing is simpler compared to the kind of marketing that we need to do. So I'm just trying to set the context, and therefore, because we have a lot of challenges, we have to be very innovative. So let's go to the next slide. So now when you are a non-profit marketer, so what are the things that you'll have to consider? So the first is economic costs. Okay. Now, we are trying to convince, let's say, a funding agency to give us $1 million. Now, that is an economic cost for them. So they want to give $1 million, trusting our value proposition, trusting our brand, trusting our vision, and things like this. So that's a big economic cost for them. So that is one. The second thing, if you look at is, as I said, we are trying to work with a lot of people to bring about awareness about climate, awareness about the need for education, need for keeping our environment clean and all that. So a lot of old ideas, values, and world views have to be changed. Many people working in the area of women empowerment. How do we convince very male-dominated society to go and say women have to be given equal rights? I mean, they have to be given a lot of all the opportunities and things like this, especially in the rural areas. Now we are asking people, or many practices which should be religious. we are trying to ask them to give up that that value and that worldview. So there again, we have to consider that. And old behavior patterns. Okay? People don't change their behaviors much, even though we know that many people who smoke. It's not that they don't know that smoking is very unhealthy and things like that, but still continue to do it because the behavior pattern is very difficult to change. And lastly, sacrifices of time and energy. So we are going to convince people to come and volunteer their time for us. Now we are trying to ask people to sacrifice. We may be asking college students, we may be asking professionals to come and spend time. We are going to ask sacrifice time and energy. Now, how you as a non-profit marketer going to address all these things? Because we are asking people for money, we are asking people for time, we are asking people for their energy, we are asking people to change their behavior pattern, we are asking people to give up their ideas, old ideas and values and worldviews. See what a difficult, this is what I meant, influencing target audience. The fundamental task of non-profit marketing is not a very easy thing. So let's go to the next slide. So at this stage, I want to take up a case for discussion. It's something that all of you know. I mean, that's why I thought we can take up a very familiar example. Then it'll be easy for us to understand. We all know the Arvind Eye Care system, which is very, very successful. Right? Now, if you look at the context for the success of Arvind Eye Care system, so this is some old data. The numbers will be much larger now. So nearly 200 million people need eye care, of which 80% blindness is caused by factors which can be treated with medical care and are preventable. So if you look at the growth of the genesis of Arvind Eye Care system, and Dr. Venkateswamy, several decades back, and he saw in Madurai, in his region, that many people were unnecessarily, in fact, there was no need. I mean, the proper attention, eyesight could have been restored. But people have become partially blind and fully blind because they were not having access to good, accessible and affordable healthcare, eye surgeries and things like this. So even today, that's a factor. Today, you can see so many people losing their sight because they don't have the time and opportunity to address it. Things like this. So it's a very major issue across the world, and nobody had a solution which will work very well, very efficient and effective solution. Because the cost was a very big consideration. People couldn't afford, and especially the poorer people, because if they come to the hospital, stay for 4 or 5 days and then at a costly surgery, they didn't have time for all that. Now, Arvind Eye Care system changed all that. So what did they do to control the cost structure? So to control the cost structure, Arvind focused on optimal utilization of its workforce and available infrastructure. It tries to cover the fixed cost by increasing the volume of surgeries using standardized procedures and medical practices. So, which meant that 50% of the people who are coming, okay, who could be people who can afford, I mean, they are paying a little higher, and that is subsidizing the poorer people. So it looked like a very simple solution. But what Arvind Eye Care did was they ensured so many standardized procedures and medical practices that the number of even the richer people didn't have to pay a huge sum for their eye surgery. That means overall the cost came down, but the volume of operations went up. Because the volume of number of patients treated was very high, a lot of revenue kept flowing in. And that revenue was enough to subsidize the poorer people. Okay, so this was a totally new model. Today this may look very standard thing, but a few decades back, this is a totally very, very innovative idea. That doing like a mass production factory, using a lot of industrial engineering principles, doing a lot of surgeries. He tested and found out that one team of doctors can do, let's say, 20 to 30 surgeries without a break. So the earlier doctors used to do only one surgery and then take a break. But he found out that actually continuously they get into 20 patients, and then, so that means immediately increases the effectiveness of the whole system. The throughput becomes much higher. Okay? So he used a lot of ideas which today, this hospital used a lot of ideas which today manufacturing companies and lean manufacturing are all using. It's a very interesting case. And if you look at what Dr. Venkateswamy said, it's a very interesting quotation. That's why I put it here. If Coca-Cola can sell billions of sodas and McDonald's can sell billions of burgers, So why can't Aravind sell millions of sight restoring operations? It's a very interesting how his vision worked. So normally we don't compare non-profit work with profit. We say that's a totally different world. You know, if Coca-Cola, McDonald's, I mean, they are profit-making organizations. We have nothing to learn from them. And here is saying, if they can sell efficiently, you know, selling all these bottles and selling so many burgers, it's not an easy thing to do it so efficiently at that level. That means they have doing something in a very good way, doing something in a very efficient way. I said, why can't we do it in hospitals? So today that is a very, what do you call, success in the world, big success across the world. Not just in terms of surgeries. In 1992, actually they set up RO Lab, which is a not-profit charitable trust, to make consumables and intraocular lenses. And today they have close to around 10% of the market share in the global intraocular lens market. So what was once $100 in 1976, the cost of an intraocular lens was $100. Now RO Labs reduced it to $2 in 1992. See the kind of work that non-profit is doing. Though we are, you know, we mean that non-profits are, basically the money angle doesn't come in. But here we have an example of something like Arvind Eye Care System, which is bringing in such a level of cost efficiency and which is comparable to international standards. They have used the economies of learning and scope significantly, so to improve the margin per paying patient. So each patient pays something, that margin is so high that they are able to use that for the poorer and the lower income segments. This is a great example of, imagine expanding of the market, 12 ways to increase your demand. I showed it in my general marketing presentation. How we can increase your penetration, how we can increase your diversification, product development and everything. Arvind is a great example of all those ways of marketing. Okay. So with that, we will go to some definitions. So I want to tell you, like, what is marketing management? So in the context of non-profits. So I gave you a definition of marketing, which said marketing is the art and science of finding opportunities. So now let's look at for non-profits, what is the definition for marketing management? We'll go to the next slide. So marketing management is the process of planning and executing programs designed to influence the behavior of target audiences by creating and maintaining beneficial exchanges. So one of the key things that we keep talking about in non-profit marketing is the term target audience. That is a very vital term before you want to start any marketing effort. So basically, you are changing your in marketing. We are changing our mindset from, we call it as a product mindset, and then sales mindset, and then we call it as a target audience mindset. So many NGOs I talk to, if I ask them, who are you, what do you do? The first thing they will say is the work that they are doing on the field. I'm building schools, I'm conducting training programs, I'm arranging for loans, I'm working in women empowerment. So something broadly you say in terms of your product actually. But in marketing, the key concept is to move away from market products and start talking about your target audience. Now, these are the target audience I'm dealing with, and my vision or mission is to change the behavior of this particular target audience. So I think this is a very, very important definition for marketing for non-profits before we start looking at examples and things like this. Can you go to the next one? Next slide. So when you do that, you become what is called as a target audience centered organization. Your whole activities are focused around a particular target audience. So you make every effort to sense, to serve and satisfy the needs and wants of its multiple publics within the constraints of your budget. All of us are working within budgetary constraints. So now we are making a total effort to ensure that our target audience needs are completely satisfied. So I'm just giving some examples. For example, Speak Mackay. We know that this is a non-profit agency which is actually involved in the promotion of music and Indian culture. But when they started this, they realized that the most important target audience is the youth, because they are the one who are not able to understand and appreciate the beauty of your culture and music. And at the same time, they will understand and appreciate it only if it's presented to them in a format which they like. So Spick McKay changed the format in which classical music is organized and presented to youth. So they kept the youth audience in mind. At the same time, they were working for the promotion of Indian music and audience. But how do you fine tune that offering for your youth audience? So that is very clear. Right? So similarly, Indian Cancer Institute. Now this is a problem when I said multiple target audiences. For example, cancer. We all know that smoking causes cancer. So initially, the Cancer Institute, Indian Cancer Institute, started addressing that problem. Stop smoking, stop smoking. So that awareness was spread. But then the question in people's mind was, many people know that smoking causes cancer, but they didn't know how to stop smoking. So once when they knew the target audience, Indian Cancer Institute said, so it's not enough to build awareness. Now we will have to tell them how to stop smoking. We'll have to create some programs which will help people come out of the smoking habit. So how do we do that? So your whole effort and your campaigns shift when you understand your target audiences. And similarly, cancer is not only smoking related. So a lot of senior citizens get cancer due to various other causes like prostate cancer and things like that. Now, how do we spread awareness for that? So any work that you do, it's very important to understand your target audience, like the Indian Cancer Institute did. And then how do you fine tune your offerings based on that? Now today, for example, CRY, Child Relief and You, we know how it works. So the moment we say CRY, we know what is the target audience. How they reach out to the target audience, how they promote the causes of the target audience, that's very clear. Let's take Akshaya Patra, which is a very huge success. Okay? Started in the year 2000. And today, I think these numbers should have grown now. So I'm looking at some document which is saying they're currently feeding over 1.6 million children in 13,900 schools and 4,000 Anganwadi centers with food prepared in over 34 kitchens across India. So one of the success of Akshay Patra is that we knew our target audience, which is not only the schools. Now they work with schools, they work with government agencies, they work with corporates, and they are one of the most successful in terms of media marketing and digital marketing and promotion. This is a great example of how you work with multiple target audiences and how do we engage with them. Right? Now they are addressing several issues. The Akshaya Patra is not just a simple feeding program. They are addressing several issues of hunger, malnutrition, and also promoting the cause of education. And they were one of the first to engage in a very active public-private partnership. So which means working with multiple target audiences, connecting the government, schools, and the corporate agencies, and also with individual, contributors. So that's a great example of thing. So at this stage, I just want to take a pause and check in terms of our time. And also this is the right time to ask each one of you, maybe a couple of you can answer. Like, are you clear about your target audience and what kind of changes you are bringing about in your target audience? And how are you doing that? What kind of challenges you are facing in that? What kind of marketing? Do you have any marketing success story in dealing with your target audience? So it would be a good idea to take some viewpoints now. Can someone, if you can raise your hand and then unmute and speak. To make it easier for you, I'm just, maybe I can put certain questions so you can react to that. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so these are questions. I'm sure all of you would have some answers for that. So who are your potential clients? Who are your potential donors? Who are your potential volunteers? Now, how do you position yourself to be successful with these audiences? And what broad approaches you are using for your marketing initiative? Because this question was raised in the beginning, like how do we position ourselves? So I want to know what you are doing right now, so it'll be easier for us to then look at certain details. So can we have some responses, please?
சரி, யாராவது கொஞ்சம் நம்ம இன்டராக்ட் பண்ணோம் அப்படின்னா இட் வில் பி லைவ். ஏன்னா சார் மட்டும் பேசிட்டு இருந்தாங்கன்னா ஒரு மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஸோ somebody has to interact.
Okay, then I'll ask you another question. Maybe you can just go to the next slide. Skip this also, go to the next slide. Okay, now we all know this NGO like Teach for India, which actually succeeded in a big way. So I'm sure some of you are working in this kind of a field. Now Teach India has been a very big success. Yeah. So in terms of marketing, they seem to have done something in their planning and execution of their marketing work. They seem to have done something very interesting. There are a lot of best practices to learn from them. Now, how do you think, how did Teach for India succeed in fundraising and in developing a volunteer base? Any ideas, any thoughts on this? Anyone? I'm sure some of you are familiar with the work of Teach for India.
Sir, if needed, you can briefly explain, sir.
Yeah, may I come in, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In response with the discussion, we are in the threshold of digital marketing, and traditional process of fundraising through the volunteers rule has been changed. So related to that of the digital marketing, volunteer needs to do something different as far as the cloud funding, cluster funding, all those aspects are required. I think Teach for India did the same few aspects related to this, with changing the role of volunteers to get the fundraising and targeting the audience. So this is my inputs related to this, sir.
Yeah.
Please have your expert guidance upon this.
Sure. Thank you. I mean, that's a good point. And one more person raised their hand. So I just want to see what point they wanted to say.
Sir, Mr. Ajit Bera, do you have any question? Mr. Ajit Bera? I think, no, sir, we can proceed, GSR.
So I think you made a right point. Like, how do we use, one, of course, we use a lot of technology. So I think that Teach for India did that. And so the problem that they tried to address was there is a lot of inequality in the education system today in the world. The people who come from, above average income and high income families, they have a lot of, in spite of all the things that the government is doing, people in the cities and families living in cities and people with certain educational background, their children seem to have an advantage in getting good education. Now, what about people who are otherwise, who have good learning abilities, but they're not getting opportunities to learn? And for that, so this model, and actually it was started in 2007. This is a very recent one only. 2007 it was started by a person called Shahin Mistry. And Teach for India, it was started in an organization headquartered in Mumbai. And it was based on another successful model already. It was not a new model. It was new in India, but it is not a new model in the world. So it is actually based on a model called Teach for America. So it just used that same model. And this is another lesson that we all marketing people can get for non-profits. Try to look for best practices, best business models, because in the corporate world, they use the term business model. So like that, look for social enterprises models, which are working well in some other place. It can be in Europe, it can be in Africa, it can be in Australia or America. Just look for this best practice social enterprise models and see if you can bring it here. So that's exactly what Shahin Mistry did. So the Teach for America model was basically trying to use the time, volunteering time of college going, students who otherwise always wanted to contribute to education. These students have a lot of time on their hands and they definitely want to contribute. So even for money and also for recognition, for community work, I mean, they all want to do it. So they try to reach out to all the college students, and that seemed to be a very big success because they were all waiting for some opportunity like that, where they can go and teach school children, where they can go and teach, share their knowledge and things like this. So they tapped a very natural, instinct, something easily available. So their marketing was easier because they identified the target audience very well. And then very effective campaigns. Of course, they got a lot of support from the corporates. I think they got support from several leading corporate houses. But most importantly, I think you mentioned that for digital marketing, they had a partner. They did partner with Times of India, so as a media partner, and Times of India often gave them the reach all over the country, and I think that was one of the most successful partnerships between an NGO and a media organization. In fact, Times of India came on board as a media partner and offered pro bono advertising for the campaign. So the pro bono advertising means, I mean, basically it was free. So otherwise they should have spent crores of money for that kind of advertising. So you will have to look out for these kind of opportunities. Again, go back to that marketing definition. How do you identify opportunities? Now, this opportunity that Times of India can come and help them in marketing is not something that is available in the textbook, right? So I mean, they have to think of that as an opportunity. So, and then there was a lot of issues of curriculum and expertise. Now, again, for curriculum, they went to a lot of schools, reputed schools, and say, can you help us in developing curriculum? And again, people there volunteered, right? So what Teach for India basically did is they became like a network partner, trying to create a network of people who are all interested in this cause of education and addressing the problem of education inequality. And they played that role of a project coordinator very well. The project coordinator between this kind of media partners, corporate houses, higher education institutions and students and government. So I think that's one of the reasons for their success. And of course, there were a lot of. So I would definitely ask you to look at this as a, go and see what all you can learn from best practices like this for Teach for India and things like that. So let's go to the next slide, because it's a very important slide here. Somebody asked at the beginning, like, how do I position myself? Okay. Now there are a lot of people are similar. If you're doing something in the field of education or hospital, there's a lot of similarities in what you do. Now, how do I differentiate myself? How do I position? The first thing that we have to ask is, what is positioning? Positioning is something, according to marketing, is something that exists in the mind of a customer, the mind of prospect. Like today, if you say Maruti car, there is a particular position in the mind of the customer. If you say Nescafe, some image comes to the mind. So when you tell that name, some image comes to the mind of the customer. So that is what we mean by positioning. And there are many alternatives in that. So let's take an example of a hospital. For example, what are the positioning? All hospitals are similar, right? We all go there to get treated, to get some medicines, to get some surgeries done and things like this. So all hospitals are similar. But if you look at the positioning alternatives, there are several positionings possible. For example, in a particular hospital, we'll say this hospital has superior medical facilities as compared to some other hospital which may have only somewhat average kind of medical facilities, or some hospital which is completely inferior in terms of the medical facilities. Then we will say other positioning that come to our mind is it's a full service hospital. Okay? That means you go there, end to end, everything will get covered. So it's not a hospital where you go there only for some medicines. You can get a lot of things done. So that is a full service hospital. A hospital with modern facilities, the most modern testing equipment and things like this. A hospital known for friendly service. Reception, the billing process, the way you get admitted. So all that is very friendly. It's a large hospital, it's not a small in terms of number of beds, and a hospital which is completely patient oriented. Now you can say that all hospitals are supposed to be patient oriented. No, it will not be like that. Some hospitals may be more research oriented, not patient oriented. So you can say some hospitals are patient oriented. So if you look at all these things, you can see how the positioning will differ. For one, not all of them will be completely low or completely high with somebody. No, it will be a mix and match for a hospital. So if we take 3 hospitals, that kind of positioning will be different. One hospital will have superior medical facilities but not full service. It may have modern facilities but not very large. So it can have a combination of many different things. And also some of the attributes here, if you see, some are measurable. If I say, for example, large hospital, I can at least measure and say it has 200 beds. This hospital has only 50 beds. So I can make some quantitative evaluation. But if you look at friendly service, patient oriented, now how do you evaluate that? So these are all, again, basically that's why I said it's in the mind of the customer or the prospect. It's based on what they think. So one of the important things that you have to do is, for your organization, what is your positioning in the mind of your customers? So like he said, I am running let's say you're running a training center, you're running a educational setup. First, identify all these attributes which are important for like these are attributes important for a hospital. Now you identify what are the attributes important for your training center. And then go and check with your audience. What do you think? How do you evaluate us? One, of course, you can do your own evaluation, but it's always better to ask your target audience and think, how will you evaluate us on these parameters? So this is a very simple technique. So marketing language, they call it a semantic differential. So if you go on nothing but listing all the attributes, and then you have to draw a map of where do you stand. Ask the opinion of your target audience and try to create a map of their perception. So one key word to remember is positioning equal to perception. That is how your target audience perceives you. That is your positioning. You can't say I am positioning myself like this. It is not dependent on you. You have to do certain things, but ultimately your positioning is what is perceived by your target audience. So this is a very important thing that I wanted to talk about. So let's go to the, related to this, I have a question for you. So can you go to the next slide? So which is again a simple discussion question. It's not a pure non-profit, but let's consider this Patanjali Ayurveda, because they are taking a lot of our Ayurvedic, science. Based on that, they have started introducing a lot of products, and they've been quite successful. But so far, if you look at, their positioning is that it helps them succeed in the rural marketplace, but not in the cities. Now, how do you position yourself to target the urban consumers or the younger people? If you look at when you say Ayurveda, this may ring a bell with a lot of elderly people and people of the earlier generation and things like that. The current generation may not attach much value to things like Ayurveda, traditional systems of medicine. Now, how do you position yourself with millennial customers? How do you position yourself with urban consumers? Can I have some quick responses? Just quick thoughts of how do you look at it? Because it's very important. You will have to look at positioning for yourself. I'm just asking, giving you a hypothetical situation. If you are in charge of Patanjali Ayurveda, how will you position yourself? There are no right or wrong answers, so let me know what.
Yeah, anybody can share their thoughts just to have the discussion live. சார் சொன்னபடி இதில் ரைட்டு ராங்கெல்லாம் எதுவும் கிடையாது. You can share the views.
It's a very quiet audience, so they just like to listen to my voice.
உங்க ஐடியாவை நீங்க ஷேர். Anybody can share their ideas. How Patanjali have moved to this extent in a short period.
Okay.
What kind of positioning made them to this level? Anybody can share their ideas. It may be wrong or right.
Okay, think about this in detail, but I'll just share some few points and then we can move on. Yeah, I think some people have raised their hands. Deva and Ajit Bera. Yeah, Mr. Deva, you can speak. You can unmute and speak.
Sir, Deva Entertainment யாருங்க? I think it is PDI. Yes, you can. நீங்க சொல்லலாமே Deva Entertainment or Ajit Bera. Anybody can share their thoughts.
Sir, I am Ajit Bera, sir.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Sir, I am talking from West Bengal. Actually, my language is Bengali. I
Okay.
cannot understand totally influence of English. So it is my difficult to listen and understand the all matters. It is
Okay.
my own problem, sir.
Okay. You want to share anything in this regard?
No, sir. It's nahi.
Okay. Thank you. Sir, you can continue.
Okay. So, but another person raised the hand. Ajit, I thought he wanted to say something about this.
Deva Entertainment, I think he is from People's Development of India, Trichy. I think they have not responded.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, this is J Baby from PDI, sir.
Yes. Do you want to share anything?
Yes, sir. It is through advertisement, sir. They have reached their target.
Only through advertisement?
Actually,
No, whatever you can, you can think, you can share. Only advertisement இல்ல வேற ஏதாவது அவங்க ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்கா பண்ணாங்களா? Has they done anything specifically? Any idea?
Yeah, I think she's right. You are right in saying they advertised. But what was their focus? Because you remember what I had been saying so far. We are trying to influence the target audience, right? So, what were they trying to influence the target audience through their advertisement? What kind of influencing were they doing? I can see multiple hands getting raised, so people can unmute and speak. What kind of influencing they were trying to do?
High level political influence, sir, I think.
Okay, other than political influence, let's do for our lessons. Can we learn something? What can we learn?
Okay. Sir, I think Mr. Vivek Singh, Dr. Raghuram Das.
Yeah, I will, regarding the positioning of Patanjali in the mind of customers, I think, of course, advertisement is there, but it is prepared from a place which is northeastern part of India. The location, geographical location is one of the attractions. Number two, the quality of that product is more or less well known. Thirdly, I do believe the cost of the products of Patanjali is also comparatively less. Especially they are also not only medical products, Ayurvedic products, some other food related products, cereals are also marketing. So these are some of the 2-3 components which position in the mind of customers like me.
Okay. So, any other point? See, the moment, I think you're right, in Patanjali, the moment we say positioning, so I keep seeing some Vivek Singh, do you want to say anything?
Yes, sir. Regarding this question, I would like to say that Patanjali started first train yoga to urban consumers. Then they started Ayurveda products by awareing them about the importance of Ayurveda in their life. I think so.
Okay. So let me, in the interest of time, give you a few pointers. Maybe you can think about it later. So one of the terms that we use in positioning, marketing is top of mind awareness. TOMA we call it, top of mind awareness. So when you say a particular company name, this is what I said at the beginning, you say a particular company name, or what image comes to your mind. So Patanjali, what they are trying to create is, they're trying to create an awareness in the mind of customer that if you look at, especially for people in India, there's a strong respect for tradition, there's a strong respect for, nature and things like that, right? So they were trying to appeal to that, saying, so Patanjali product is something which is a product which is very traditionalist. It's a product which is very nature oriented. So these are all very positive images that come to your mind. And also, it is not something which is driven by the corporate world, right? Because most of us, we don't want to support the multinationals. So there is a very nationalistic view. So though you said political influence, it's not like that. Today, I mean, many of us think that, why are we supporting American companies? Why shouldn't we support Indian companies? Why for making toothpaste and, soaps and things like this, multinationals should come and make money here. So we should support Indian companies. So that nationalistic sentiment. So they were trying to appeal to that nationalistic sentiment. They're trying to appeal to tradition. They're trying to appeal to nature. So that's what succeeded in their case. Other thing, of course, is the popularity of that founder, Baba Ramdev, and also maybe some political connections. But main thing is how they were able to, in a short time frame, they were able to fight against Colgate, Pepsodent, and Close-Up, and these big brands like this, and create a very large market share. You remember winning the market? I said that is opportunity. That they were able to do it with very limited resources. They didn't have too many, professionals and things like this. A very short time frame, they created a big bet. And today, the success of that, you can see, it is not only the success of Patanjali, it's a success of nature products. Because there was a time when all these Colgate and these companies were making fun of Indian people using salt and charcoal for cleaning their tooth. They used to make fun of that, fun jokes out of that, and their advertisements used to say that these are all wrong practices. And today you have Colgate charcoal and Colgate salt. So they have introduced it. So that is a success of actually our nature products marketing. That's the success of Patanjali. So, anyway, you can keep thinking about it. There are a lot of lessons in this for how we can use these lessons for our kind of work for NGOs. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? So in next slide, I'm going to talk about branding. I'm just going to give you some examples. So after that, you can work it out. For example, what is brand? So brand is nothing but a promise. Just I said positioning. Positioning is nothing but the perception in the mind of the customer. So you can write it down if you want to remember something. Positioning equal to perception. That is how customers or your target audience perceives you. Similarly, if you want to write down another simple thing to remember, branding equal to promise. So when you say you have a particular brand, what is the promise that that brand is offering? And today, this is something that's very important thing to all non-profit organizations, NGOs and CSOs have to learn if they have to market. Before you want to market, you will have to be very clear about your brand, how you created your brand. Now, I'm just giving you some examples here. For example, there is a Delhi-based NGO called Tamana. It's very interesting. It's a non-profit organization that is working with differently abled children. You know how when we say differently abled children, we always think in terms of trying to give them some help, take care of them, and things like this. Now, here they were trying to think in terms of how do we make this differently abled people succeed? Let's make them do something different. So they actually help these differently abled children to design fashion wear and also to walk the ramp at fashion shows organized specially for them. So they've been working on that since 1984, and today they have become a very high impact kind of a brand, Tamana, in this field of working with disabled children. Let's take Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. We all know the importance of keeping our environment clean, but this particular campaign has been so successful. So here there is another lesson. One is you can have a brand for your organization. You can also have a brand for your campaign. So Swachh Bharat Abhiyan was a very successful brand campaign. So how do you launch a campaign and make it successful? So right from many things like your name, that's also very important in marketing. Take for example, Cancer Foundation. Now Cancer Foundation is doing very good work. But if I say simply Cancer Foundation, you'll be confused because there are, as of today, there are many organizations working with this name. There is something called Cancer Foundation of India, Indian Cancer Society, Cancer Patients Aid Association, Cancer Aid Society. Now, how can you create a brand? How can you differentiate yourself when you don't even have a name which is very unique? Okay. So I think it's very important in your marketing efforts that first we create the right brand, which is creating a very distinct identity. For example, if you take HelpAge India, that's why I'm saying, I always tell people, if you keep a name like Integrated Rural Development Association, it's very difficult for anybody to remember the name, and then very difficult for you to create a brand around that. Take for example the brand HelpAge India. So the moment that brand is very significant, very clear what they are doing, what kind of, and it's very unique name. Similarly, like Amul, for example. Today you can expand and say Anand Milk Union and all that. Nobody remembers all that. Amul is a brand by itself. If they had kept the name of their organization's name as the Anand Milk Products Limited, that would not have been very unique, right? So Amul, the success of Amul brand is something that we'll have to remember, because they succeeded on a very, very large scale. It's one of the most well-known brands, not just in non-profit, across India is one of the most well-known brands. Now, Tihar Jail products. Can you imagine that Tihar Jail actually created a brand for Tihar Jail products. So where in the spare time of all these jail inmates, they are actually creating a lot of good products. So this is the essence of branding, that you are creating the proper right look and feel. The name is unique. And then there is a slogan that actually a tagline. So every brand, if you have a logo for you, that logo should have a proper tagline. Okay? And make the tagline very effective. Okay? So I'll give you, later on, maybe I'll just send you a list of all campaign brands. I have a list of a lot of successful campaign brands for the last 20 years. So I'll send you all that list later. So let's go to the next slide. I think I just stopped here. So the other thing that I talked about is one of the challenges in non-profit marketing is compared to corporate world, who have very standard offerings. If they make a toothpaste comes in 5 different versions, a large, small, medium, with 5 different kinds of brands. It's easy for them to sell, and they can keep on changing their offering, changing the color, changing the package, and changing the flavor and things like this. Now, for us, it's very difficult to come up with new offerings. And there, one of the good examples that you can study is NABARD. If you look at the story of NABARD, how they have been coming up with continuously new offerings in the area of rural development. And this is one of the very interesting things that they have done. How do we microfinance cold storage in rural hinterland? Okay. The needs of small farmer groups who have cold storage needs. They may not be able to go to the big banks. They may not be able to set up a big cold storage chain. So how do we help them do microfinancing for very small mini storage units, cold storage? It's a very successful campaign and an initiative and successful offering. Similarly, look at Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam. They worked at TCS. I remember at that point of time I was in TCS. They were one of the very first, before even corporates could think of. Here was a temple administration which is trying to see how we can use information technology to enhance pilgrim satisfaction in terms of booking, ticket booking, in terms of booking for the, the sevas, they call the worship things, and booking for in the resort. How do we use analytics? How do we use biometrics? So everything they use the technology for the last 20-25 years, they've been using technology. How do we do crowd management through technology and things like this? So constantly think in terms of new offerings, because unless you have new offerings, many NPOs make that, non-profit organizations make the mistake. They think that marketing meaning advertisement. Marketing means going and doing a lot of social media posts. It's not like that. you will have to keep thinking of a lot of new offerings, new campaigns, okay? Creating branded offerings. That's very important for you. Only when you do something like this, later on you can build content around that. Otherwise, it's very difficult to generate content. So what I'll do, I think I'll stop here because I've taken more than 1 hour 40 minutes. For the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes, can we have some discussions? And what I will do is, with all the participants here, Mr. Tyagarajan, you can do that. I'm going to send trends in non-profit marketing. So there is a recent report, so which lists all the specific, because some of you in this program today, you may be interested to know some specific techniques, tools and techniques. So I have talked mostly about certain applications and concepts. So for those of you who are interested in knowing what kind of techniques for, because there is a lot of things around content marketing, a lot of things about brand marketing, and a lot of things about social media marketing. So there are, what are the trends that successful non-profit organizations are using across the world? So I think it's a recent report, last year's report by a leading organization. So I'm going to share that report. It's a very lengthy document, but please go through it. You will get a lot of inputs. So I'll share that document with Bindu and Tyagarajan. They will forward it to you. So at this stage, I'll stop and see. I think we have another 15-20 minutes, so we can take some questions and discuss.
Yes, sir. Anybody want to talk? I think Mr. MK. சார் இது சார் இது வரைக்கும் கண்டக்ட் பண்ணிருக்கல, ஏதாவது நீங்க எனி டவுட் யூ கேன் ஆஸ்க். Or strategic management, you got any other doubt? சார் குமாரவேல் சார், நீங்க ஏதோ தப்பான கீயை பிரஸ் பண்ணிருக்கீங்கன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். நீங்க பிரசன்ட் பண்ற மாதிரி இருக்கு. குமாரவேல் சார்,
சார் ஆக்சுவலி நான்
வெளியே வந்துருங்க.
எஸ்.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
How the Dolo company sold more medicines in very less time, minimum time, and very less cost with big profit? What is the marketing strategy of Siren Poonawalla? How they made corona dose in very less time?
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Sir, Mr. MK, can you please come again? I think as far as the limited hearing I heard, is Aadhar Poonawalla has how made shortly that
How to the Dolo company sold more medicine in very less minimum time and very less cost with big profit? What is the marketing strategy of Siren Poonawalla? How they made corona dose in a very less time?
Sir, your good name, sir?
Musa Kurne.
Right, sir. Okay. I think he's from Maharashtra.
Okay. I don't think that's more a marketing strategy. It was more, because normally pharma companies need a lot of time for clinical trials when they develop a vaccine. But I think what this organization was able to do was try to find a way of very quickly doing the clinical trials, because you have to get approvals, right? It's not like you can develop a vaccine and just send it. It has to be subjected to a lot of approvals and tests. So somehow they were able to do the clinical trials, which otherwise would take a lot of time. The clinical trials very effectively in a short period of time and get the standards and get the approvals. So in a very short, it was more the way of efficiently doing that particular process. But of course, the government was also supporting them because we had a crisis on hand. Normally clinical trials would take 5 years and 10 years. Now, in this case, for this vaccine, we cannot wait for 5 or 10 years. So they had to modify that process. So I think it was more their innovation in terms of their management practices, and that's what helped them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay.
But you are right. That is also part of your, how do you develop your product is also part of your marketing. So you will have to be very clear in that also. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Musa Kurani. Any other person? I
No,
want
sir.
to. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think one of the key things in your branding, advertisement and all that, try to come up with a lot of innovative campaigns. I think that is one thing where the non-profit organizations differ from each other. So I'm in the trends report that I'm going to send you, you will see a lot of very innovative ideas. And so, but you will have to think of something which is innovative for your line of work, like what Teach for India did, or what that Tamana did for with differently abled children. So what can we, that, for example, moment you identify a target audience, what can we do differently? That's a question that we'll have to ask. So unless you decide on that, your marketing will not succeed. Unless you have a product which is very clear, unless you have a brand which is very clear, unless you have a position which is very clear, you cannot start your marketing. For example, there is a successful non-profit campaign, which is Tuesdays are meant for giving. So they are basically encouraging all the people to go to offices and this thing, saying, start donating some money on Tuesdays. Now, Monday, of course, you have come from a weekend, after Sunday, you have come to the office, and Monday, you are busy surrounded with work. Now, on Tuesday, before you start the week's work, say Tuesday, think of giving some money, donating some money. So they launched a campaign saying happened in the US, Tuesdays are for giving. And that became such a big thing, So people started giving on Tuesdays. They all thought first thing in Tuesdays, let's at least donate some money. So you will have to think of innovative campaigns like this. So the branding is not just for your organization, branding is also for your campaigns.
So people from Tamil Nadu can ask even in Tamil also. Sir will be able to answer.
Right.
If somebody has any specific questions. Or any other questions from other state participants? We'll utilize his time, his valuable time he has given us.
Any questions in Tamil?
Sir, வேற ஏதாவது நீங்க கேட்கணும்னு நினைச்சா கூட கேட்கலாம். ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. Sir, Vivek Singh, do you want to ask anything?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have a query regarding niche marketing.
What is the question?
Sir, I want to know about niche marketing.
What do you want to know by needs marketing? What do you want to know?
Sir, how can we perform in any production house or marketing company?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to understand what you're asking.
Niche marketing is not a type of marketing, Vivek.
Yes, sir.
ये अलग एक मार्केटिंग का ये टाइप नहीं है, ये मार्केटिंग कैसे करने का.
That's why I'm asking, sir. How can
a niche marketing is a terminology to do marketing wisely.
Just ask you question in Hindi.
Even you can ask question in Hindi. Vivek ji, you can ask. Probably, sir will reply. You can ask in Hindi.
सर मैं जानना चाहता कि हम कई बार नीच मार्केटिंग के बारे में पढ़ते हैं, तो वो मैं थोड़ा उसको थोड़ा क्लियरली जानना चाह रहा था, क्योंकि कई लोगों से मैंने बात की इसके रिगार्डिंग, तो उन्होंने थोड़ा उनका डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट था उसके रिगार्डिंग.
Okay.
So just want to know what's your point of view regarding this.
I think he's referring to the word called need shifting marketing.
Yes.
So you're asking about that. So, there is a very fundamental thing in marketing is they talk about need, want, and demand. Okay, need is very fundamental. For example, I need shelter, I need clothing. So that is all fundamental needs. I need food, right? Now, each person will have a different kind of want. My need is food, but let's say I want South Indian food. Somebody wants North Indian food. Somebody wants a pizza. So the wants are different. So the need is actually to have some food. Need is actually to have some house, something to stay. But then the want will be like somebody will say, I want to have a flat. I want to have an independent house, or I want to live in a villa. So the needs and wants are defined like that. So when I say need shifting, today what we can do is how can we change the needs of people? For example, somebody says, I want to have a house for myself. So that is a need. But we can go and convince them. Today, that's what many organizations are doing. Why do you want to invest in a house for yourself? Just live in a rented house. All you have to do is assume that rented house is yourself. You try to buy a house of your own after you retire. There's no need for you to buy a house now for yourself now. You can see many people. So that is what called need shifting. So say that don't try to address that need immediately, but see how we can. And if you look at the work of non-profits, many times you're trying to do need shifting. People who are, let's say, trying to spend their money in one particular direction. You are saying don't spend it like this, spend it in a different way. Okay. So this is exactly what we mean by need shifting. I don't know whether I answered your question, but it's mainly about shifting the perspective of people. Okay, shifting the mindset of people. So that's what we mean by need shifting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Today in banking they do that. Today if you want a credit card, somebody will say there's no need for a credit card now. Why do we need a credit card? There is another service available from the bank. So the credit card is no longer a need. So earlier 10 years back, credit card was recognized as a fundamental need. Now with a lot of GPay has come, all immediate instant payment options have come. Why do you need a credit card? So need shifting has already taken place there. You needed a credit card only for making quick payments. Now that is being done by UPI. Now you don't need a credit card. So in marketing, you will see that constantly the need is there, but that need is shifted to something else. So that's what we mean by need shifting. Okay, I saw another question, Kumaravel.
He has not raised any questions, sir. He has raised his hands.
Okay. So the lessons from strategic marketing are this. One is, of course, there are fundamentals of marketing that I think we all have to be familiar with. So that's why I spent some time in the beginning. And the fundamentals of marketing are nothing but if you remember few things, that is enough. The fundamentals of marketing is segmenting, targeting, and positioning. Like whatever market you are working with, whatever thing, try to segment. Try to segment in terms of your target audience. Try to segment your target audience, and then you target. You target a particular kind of. You can't work with. Suppose if say I want to work with the poor people, you cannot. The poor people is too large a segment. So try to do some segmentation of the poor people. Is it urban poor or is it rural poor? So like that, we'll do segmenting. So you can do a lot of micro segmentation, they call. Okay. Even when you say rural poor, within rural poor, there will be many segments. When you say urban poor, there will be again many segments. So try to do micro segmentation. After that, you target a particular segment, saying, I am going to target on this particular target audience. Okay. So then you position yourself and saying, how will I be seen by those people? Okay. So what should be my name? What should be my logo? What should be my mission statement? So what is my website? How will it look like? So these are all what are my offerings? So this is what is called as positioning. So the first thing in marketing to remember is your segmenting, targeting, and positioning. And the second thing is the marketing mix. That's where I gave you that 7 P's. That is all the components of your marketing program. So you have, product, price, place, promotion, people, and things like that. Physical evidence. So these are all your. So try to think of all that in your program. So if you think of STP, which is segmenting, targeting, and positioning, plus your marketing mix, I think a lot of marketing questions get answered. Then you go to the CSO specific things where I talked about target audience. How do you manage your target audience? That is the essence of your marketing. So how do you brand your organization? How do you brand your campaigns? So these are two important things. Then the specific techniques of marketing, which is what I'm going to, because that it's very difficult to specific techniques to talk about in a webinar. So I'm going to share the document with you where you can see certain specific techniques which are currently being followed, which are most happening trends in marketing. So that I'm going to share it with you in a document. So I've given you some whatever examples that I was able to look at. I had given you Teach for India, I had given you Aravind Eye Care or Patanjali. So look at similar examples and see what are the best practices that you can learn from them. So you have any closing comments, Bindu or Mr. Tyagarajan? If you have anything, we can.
Yes, sir.
Maybe with all these people, we can also share. Remember, I had shared for our mentoring, I had shared that social enterprise business model canvas.
Oh, yes, sir.
That also can be shared with all these people because, when you're running a non-profit organization, the first question someone asked was about how do I get competitive advantage? How do I position myself? How do I look different when compared to others? That's a wonderful question to start the program. So the social enterprise model business canvas is a very important tool. So where, organizations, the companies have a business model, even social enterprises, whether you are doing training, whether you're doing healthcare, you have a particular business model. Though I use the term business, basically it's an organizational model. So I call it a social enterprise business model. So it has certain components, so which is self-explanatory. So basically you have to define your organization by answering those 10 or 9 or 10 questions that is there in that canvas. So that document will be shared with you. So you can do it as an exercise of how do you define your organization in that social enterprise. And that will in fact will help in your positioning. So the social enterprise business model is basically to help you in your positioning. So that is one you can do. Then you can read all the trends report that I'm going to send.
Yeah. Sir, in case there is no further comments, we can close the session, sir.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
You can always send a mail to me or something, or you can ask them for any doubts or anything that they want to follow up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would, we would request all the CSOs in case of you have any specific, like if you want to design a campaign or any specific activity and you want